All right, Trump addresses the nation on Iran. Let's check it out. Welcome to Rob Schmitt Tonight. A little breaking news off the top. NASA's Artemis II has launched a 10-day tour around the moon, is what we are told. And it was a sight to see just a little bit ago. More on that later in the show, including why it's so complicated to do this. We did it a few times 50 years ago, right? We're going to get into all that. Other breaking news we're following tonight, of course, we're awaiting an update from the president on Iran. A prime time address is coming. The White House says will include some breaking news tonight as well. Earlier today, the president telling Reuters he'll tell Americans that we'll be out of Iran pretty quickly, sticking to maybe 2 to 3 weeks, like he said yesterday from the Oval Office, but may return for spot hits if needed. The president also is going to express a total disgust for our allies in NATO. This much earned after the United States spent a fortune fully carrying the defense of Ukraine for years now, really for one major reason: to protect Europe. The Europeans now refusing to help neutralize a threat to the entire West, refusing to help us, a jihadist regime with ballistic missiles that are easily capable of hitting them. And they're not helping the United States to neutralize this, to secure the strait. They don't want to do anything on this war. That has enraged the president. Between yesterday and today, Trump has stated quite clearly that he does want to end this war in Iran as soon as possible. Take a listen.
We could just take their oil, but, I'm not sure that the people in our country have the patience to do that, which is unfortunate. They want to see it end. I'd prefer just to take the oil. We could do it so easily. I would prefer that. But people in the country sort of say, just win. You're winning so big. Just win. Come home. I would say that within 2 weeks, maybe 3, we're hitting them very hard. We want to knock out every single thing they have. Now, it's possible that we'll make a deal before that. It doesn't matter whether they come or not. We've set them back. It'll take 15 to 20 years for them to rebuild what we've done to them.
15 to 20 years to rebuild. At an Easter ceremony today, Trump saying he was interested in taking Iran's oil, as he did with Venezuela, and reducing these narco and terror states into nothing. He was talked out of that. He was told to just take the win, take the decimated regime, and move along. Sounds like that's where his head's at now. Axios reporting the U.S. and Iran are discussing a ceasefire, potentially ending the assault on Iran's regime in exchange for them giving us a clean opening of the Strait of Hormuz. Oil gets back to normal, back down to $50-$60 a barrel, and we all just move on. Iran neutralized for, as he said, 10 to 15 years. Americans wondering if the president may announce some kind of ground operation tonight. That's been speculated widely today. That is very unlikely from what we are hearing at this point. Even if that was the plan, it's also unlikely that Trump would announce something like that on television. That would probably be a surprise. The suggestion of it, though, has the Iranian regime very nervous after claiming a couple weeks ago that they welcome a ground invasion. Here's the foreign minister spewing more of his nonsense and saying it like this. Take a listen.
We are waiting. I do not think they would dare to do such a thing. Very heavy casualties would await them. We did not start this war, but we defended ourselves forcefully. You have seen the damage inflicted on them, to their facilities, equipment, radars, aircraft and strategic aircraft, and what happened to their AWACS. In ground warfare, we are even better than this. We are fully prepared to confront any ground threat to our country, and we hope they do not make this mistake.
Yeah, they're even better in ground warfare because they've been so great so far, right? Our military is reeling from Iran's spectacular display of force, as you can tell. Reports that the Iranians are so desperate they're forcing children into security and military roles. A story like that is more in tune with the reality of the situation about a month into this thing. Also, Iran's president issuing a public statement to the United States claiming there's no ill will from Iran toward Americans. Yes, he actually said this. At one point, he claimed the U.S. is murdering innocent children in Iran in his statement. So what is this? This is a political maneuver by the Iranians. They know the only way that they can survive this onslaught is by turning Americans against this war. So right now, the regime is on its best behavior and trying to present itself as an innocent victim of Trump's rabid aggression. They get a lot of help from anti-Trump fools in our media here. There's a lot of people in our media and in our politics that are hoping that Trump fails at this, that Iran could somehow succeed. They are treasonous. They're terrible people, but we have them all around us. The reality is the jihadist regime in Iran has spent all of that nation's treasure for decades trying to build an arsenal large enough to attack and destroy the West. They fund terrorism throughout the Middle East, trying to destroy Western countries, trying to destroy our military bases, trying to kill Americans, trying to kill our soldiers. The Iranians call for death to America in parliament. And now their president in this moment wants your sympathy right after he murdered tens of thousands of his own people who defied his pathetic regime. This war has become far more controversial than it actually should be. A clear-headed perspective coming from Jamie Dimon this week, typically a Democrat voter, the head of J.P. Morgan.
I would step back on that one a little bit. When you say it's a war of choice, I've heard a lot of people say there was no imminent threat.
Yep.
And a threat means that it hasn't happened yet. The bad thing hasn't happened. They've been killing people around the world for 45 plus years. They've killed a lot of Americans. They funded not just Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. They have terrorist cells here. They were about to get their ballistic missiles, which I think you just found out can go almost 3,000 miles now. They never gave up nuclear. They were bad.
Exactly. If you don't want to hear it from Trump, if you don't like the president, take it from others with common sense, people that actually move from side to side depending on who's got the right idea in the moment, somebody like him. There is loads of propaganda floating around about this war, and it's been so effective that there are people out there who actually believe that our military is victimizing the innocent Iranian regime, which just wants to govern its people in peace. Yes, that ideology, that belief is all over the place in this country right now. How disturbing is that? Brigadier General John Teichert joins us now. Brigadier General Blaine Holt also with us. General, it's good to have you here, and thanks for coming on. General Holt, I want to start with you. What exactly are you expecting to hear from the president tonight?
I think he's going to lay out that his goals militarily have largely been accomplished and talk about some cleanup items left to go. But he's going to probably transition, and this is just speculation on my part, into the horrendous behavior of the allies and then what their role in this has been. He's going to talk about Lloyd's of London stopping up the Straits, and that really the Straits, although we want to prevent a famine, we want to see oil flow, it's not a vital interest in the United States. We have what we need. And so he's probably going to cover and encompass all of those things. And he may actually bring it to domestic politics for exactly what you're talking about, Rob, which is folks can't get unified about eliminating a nuclear weapons threat from crazed psychopaths. Wow, that's astonishing.
It is astonishing. It's astonishing how this has become so controversial. I mean, when you hear Dimon just lay it out the way it is, I mean, that's just the reality of it. That's not MSNBC's take or Fox's take. That's just what the situation is right now, and it's pretty basic. It's pretty understandable. General Teichert, what do you expect to hear tonight?
Rob, I think a couple of things and maybe a surprise or two. And the two things that I really expect to hear from him, number one, just the reassurance that the president has a strategy, he has a plan, he knows why we are there, and he is marching towards the accomplishment of that strategy. And number two, he's going to tie up all of these military activities and objectives into a grander strategic plan. And those are the two things I very much expect to hear from him. But I either expect to hear from him that we will start striking energy targets in Iran. He's hinted at that the last 2 weekends. Or this may be the go order for the Iranian people to finally rise up. We've told them to stay in their homes, but I think it's maybe finally time for them to emerge and take back their country.
That's an interesting thing I hadn't even thought of. Will he make that call to the people of Iran? Let's, if you want to take this regime out that you've hated for 47 years, there's probably never going to be a better moment than right now. They're never going to be this unstable ever again. General Holt, as far as Hormuz goes, the Strait of Hormuz, the president has put out a lot of different kinds of ideas about what he's going to do here, including securing it completely, also just leaving it, making the Europeans secure it. What do you think he decides? Because this is pretty mission critical. We still have, we have our own oil. We're energy independent, but our oil is still on the global market. We need that strait open.
We all need that straight open. And the catastrophe is not even oil and gas, Rob. It's actually the precursors to the fertilizer.
Right.
And it's growing season in Africa. And that African food actually exports to Europe for their grocery stores in the fall. So what the president's doing is classic Trump. He is putting out all kinds of conflicting information all over the place. He's keeping his own counsel. He knows what he's going to do. I don't think he's going to hit energy targets. I don't think he's going to hit infrastructure because he'd essentially be inviting the Chinese Navy. But I do think he's probably putting an invisible hand behind the 90 million population and encouraging them to take things back into their own hands. If that happens, they'll welcome us into their country with open arms. We can round up the uranium. We can help secure the straits, and everything will be much better off.
General Teichert, one last question on NATO here. The president has indicated he's even considering pulling out. How bad has the behavior been from this alliance in regards to this war? I mean, we saw with the ballistic that he sent into the Indian Ocean to our island that we have with the UK and that base there, that they can get ballistics into Europe, and yet Europe has completely refused to help in this moment.
Rob, I think two things should cause us great concern about our partners in NATO. Number one, that they've refused to help. In fact, in many cases, they've refused overflight. And then number two, this is actually a energy flow that's far more important to them than it is to us. And they are threatened far more by Iran than we are. I think the president's pretty persuasive. I think NATO is going to come around. We need to stick with them, but they need to stick with us. And I think it's now time for them to demonstrate their commitment to a global cause, which is helping end the regime and opening up Hormuz.
Well, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that Mark Rutte, the NATO chief that loves the president and the president loves him, is going to try and come in and smooth things over at the White House next week. We'll see where that takes us. General Teichert, General Holt, good to have you both here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Walid Phares has advised the president on foreign policy, and he joins us now. And Walid, good to have you here. What are you expecting tonight, and where do you think the president should take us on this operation?
It's very difficult to say. So many subjects, so many directions. What the president really wants to target, is it really our allies, to put a pressure on them, explaining it to the American public, or really tell us exactly where he's going next weeks? I would surmise that certainly he wants to educate the American public. And there are many areas, one of which is what is the status of the operations right now? Number two, what is the status of the negotiations, if they are valid or not? Number three, as you have discussed with the gentleman, what is the path? Are we going to be just withdrawing after destroying whatever we're going to choose to do? Or are we going to cooperate with the Iranian people? And I would vote, if I have influence here, that he should explain to the American public that we have an ally, and that ally is the Iranian people. That is how he started it with the 2 posts. If I remember in the beginning, he told the Iranians, rise, seize your institutions, and tell us who has been causing harm to you. So if that is the general direction, I think that would be a very good speech.
Is there? There's a lot of people claiming that the Iranian diaspora here in the United States is turning against this war, and they're using numbers that I just simply don't believe at all. I can't imagine there are that many Iranians in this country that are supporting the regime as it fights against the United States, a country that they fled to from Iran.
These are the ideas and the talking points of the Islamic regime lobby.
Exactly.
Remember, let's all remember. A president in 2015 has sent $150 billion to the regime. Do you think the regime used all these $150 billion to improve Iran? No.
Hell no.
He sent back most likely about 10% of that operation to create lobbies, to create influence. They have controlled the education system, the media system, and of course, even art in Hollywood has been impacted. That has been in operation for 10 years of Iran regime or Islamic regime influence inside the United States, and that is the result. And even those who are demonstrating to globalize the Intifada, where do you think they're getting their support from? From the same regime.
Absolutely. Real quick before I let you go, Fareed Zakaria on CNN. He often has some interesting takes. He's an independent thinker. Here's how he feels about this war. He says this has not gone well. I want to get your reaction to this.
Not only are the strategic objectives of the war then not achieved, you have the same Iranian regime in place with even more hardliners, with the Revolutionary Guards in place. They are earning twice as much from their oil as they were before, and they are making potentially hundreds of millions of dollars, charging fees, $2 million per boat that goes through the Strait of Hormuz. You've created a situation which is much, much worse for America and its allies, much, much better for Iran.
That's a very negative take on this. He forgets to mention how much they're going to have to spend to rebuild all of the regime infrastructure that's been destroyed, all the military infrastructure that's been destroyed. Your reaction to that, though?
Absolutely. This is a media propaganda barrage, and it's not new. They have been doing, the same person have been doing this under George Bush, under other presidencies, under Trump first, and now under Trump too, because look at the other side of the coin. They support the Iran deal, and the Iran deal is a lot of money to that regime, and the regime knows where he invests.
Right. That's well said. Walid Phares, good to see you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Birth tourism, anchor babies, an immigration system that is so ridiculous in this country, it's parody. So why does it feel like the Supreme Court is about to protect all this? We've got that coming up next. Plus, in news from the left, an American communist gets a dose of reality in Havana.
I couldn't believe the sights that I was seeing. It was very sad.
Federal agencies urge every family to have an emergency radio. During any disaster, electrical power may get cut. The emergency radio gives you the vital information you need. Newsmax wants you to have the Dynamo Emergency Band Radio. It doesn't need batteries and works in any emergencies. It retails for $30. You can get it with the free offer. Call or go online and get the emergency radio today. Your life may depend on it.
Guys, it's time to get what you want. With help from Ageless Male Max, a doctor-recommended solution for boosting testosterone right at its source. Be the man you want to be.
Millions are trading crypto, but finding the right platform, difficult, unless you use Kraken. It's simple. Buy, sell, or withdraw anytime. Kraken. Looks good on you.
What's gold is new again. Pardon the pun. But considering gold has been used as currency since around 550 BC, it has been on fire the past year. I'm here with Daniel Boston, the founder of Preserve Gold. Why is gold so stable and such a good investment for many people?
Take the central bank, for example, the Federal Reserve. They print money out of thin air, and then they take that printed money to go buy hard assets like gold to protect themselves against the very risks that they're creating. So I always tell people, don't do what the big players are telling you to do. Do what they're doing themselves.
Yeah, watch what they're doing.
That's correct.
Okay. If people are interested in investing with Preserve Gold, how do they get started?
Text Newsmax to 50505 to get your free information and up to $15,000 in free gold and silver with a qualified purchase. That's right. Text Newsmax to 50505.
All right. No way you can miss it.
Welcome back. The Supreme Court hearing the landmark Birthright citizenship case today. Trump in attendance. SCOTUS taking a challenge to Trump's executive order that ended Birthright. It was on day one of the presidency. This is something that has been fully exploited for decades in this country. You have pregnant women that come to the United States, they have the baby here, citizenship for the baby, and then chain migration brings the whole family in. We've seen so much of this. It's so ridiculous. No other first world country allows this. Trump's team says the citizenship clause in the 14th Amendment has long been misinterpreted, specifically the portion that states subject to the jurisdiction thereof, right in the middle, saying that this was clearly meant for the children of slaves, which is quite obvious when you look at when it was written. Solicitor General John Sauer revealing there are at least 500 birth tourism companies in China. 500 companies that their goal is to just dump babies here so you can get citizenship for Chinese citizens, exploiting our country's very, very liberal immigration policies. Wall Street Journal reporting wealthy Chinese elites, billionaires are having more than 100 kids in some cases. One dude with a lot of cash having 100 kids in the United States, just put them in surrogates, as many as he can find. This is insane, the details of this story. Pew Research reports 9% of U.S. births in 2023 were to illegal aliens or temporary legal status holders. 9% of the babies born are anchor babies in our country. That's hundreds of thousands of babies a year. ending this nonsense is absolutely common sense. But of course, a couple of our so-called conservative justices seemed very skeptical today. Let's take a listen.
We're in a new world now, as Justice Alito pointed out to, where 8 billion people are one plane ride away from having a child who's a U.S. citizen.
Well, it's a new world. It's the same Constitution.
I can imagine it being messy on some applications. And if you're looking at parents' domicile, then you have to adjudicate both residence and intent to stay. What if you don't know who the parents are?
I think there are marginal cases. That one, I think, has the benefit of being addressed in 1401F, where it talks about...
Yeah. But what about the Constitution?
We also heard from Ketanji Brown Jackson. You know where her vote is before it even starts. Of course, in favor of Birthright, before even hearing the arguments. Ketanji had a major flub today. Take a listen.
I think there are various sources that say this, that you obviously have permanent allegiance based on being born in whatever country you're from. I, a U.S. citizen, am visiting Japan. And what it means is that, if I steal someone's wallet in Japan, the Japanese authorities can arrest me and prosecute me. Even though I'm a temporary traveler, I'm just on vacation in Japan, I'm still locally owing allegiance.
So you get arrested in another country, and that means you have allegiance to that country when you commit a crime. It's more than just a really stupid comment and a ridiculous stretch, right? It's also just a reminder of how hard the liberal justices on the court seem to always work to push this thing one way or another. In this case, working to help the plaintiff in this case. She had to stretch that hard to help the ACLU, whose attorney, by the way, the plaintiff's attorney, arguing for birthright citizenship, is an anchor baby herself. A Taiwanese woman, her parents came to the U.S. on student visas, gave birth to her in 1971 in the state of Oregon. So the ACLU saying, you know what, we're just going to put this right out there for you. John Eastman joins us now. He's a former attorney for President Trump. He was at today's oral arguments. Politico has dubbed John the man behind Trump's push to end birthright citizenship. So he is the man to talk to tonight. And John, thank you for coming on. What did you make of today? And I guess the first question might be your prediction on how this is going to go.
Well, let me predict this, certainly. Justices Kagan, Sotomayor, and Brown Jackson are not going to vote to uphold President Trump's executive order.
Shocker.
I think I'm not out on a limb on that one.
No.
They were the dissenting justices back last summer in the Czinger case when the issue on the merits was not even there, but they went out of their way to address the merits. I am more optimistic on the other six. Now it's hard to predict. The questions that you just played from for example, Justice Barrett, she was equally hard on questions to the other side.
On the ACLU.
And the conservative justice thinks that's their job. We want to press the argument to try and get to the bottom of it. But there were other comments, particularly from Justice Alito, distinguishing the key case on the other side is Wong Kim Ark from 1898. And he said, look, that case turned on the domicile of the Chinese parents. The court mentioned that 20 different times. And Cecilia Wang, who I co-clerked with at the Supreme Court, she with Justice Breyer, me with Justice Thomas back in 1996, I don't think she handled that response well. She says, well, that was just a stipulated fact. It really had nothing to do with the case. It had everything to do with the case. It was the question presented. It was the final statement of the holding. And most legal scholars, up until Trump started pressing this issue a decade ago, agreed that Wong Kim Ark didn't settle the question for temporary visitors and illegal aliens. And so now all of a sudden they're acting like this has been settled law for 125 years when it clearly hasn't been.
Well, I mean, the diplomats in our country, I thought this was one of the strongest, things to point out, is that if a diplomat here in our country has a child, that child is not a citizen. So it's, when you point, and go ahead.
But they say that's all that the subject to the jurisdiction clause means. And I think Cecilia Wang made a fundamental error. She agreed that the citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment had the same meaning as the 1866 Civil Rights Act, which much more clearly says born in the United States and not subject to any foreign power. Now, if that has the same meaning as subject to the jurisdiction in the 14th Amendment, and she agreed that it did, as I think it does, then that's game over. She said, though, that not subject to any foreign power meant only ambassadors, and that's just nonsense. There's no support for that in the understanding of the 1866 Civil Rights Act at all. The fact of the matter is the people that drafted this language specifically said it means complete jurisdiction, owing allegiance, not just being here temporarily and subject to our laws. And what Justice Brown Jackson's comment made about being subject to the laws confuses that basic difference. And I understand why she did it. Most of the briefs that were filed on that side make the same error.
It's it's a lot to listen to. I listened to as much of it today as I could. I hate the fact that there's not cameras in there because I'm a visual guy. I like to see these people arguing it, but it's an interesting case. It's ridiculous how our system in so many ways has been taken advantage of after 250 years, which you knew it would be because they couldn't predict the future. This is a great example of it, the perversions of these laws and the exploitation of them. Hopefully they get this one right. And you think that they will really quick, right?
Well, I can't predict with any certainty that we'll win this case. There's just too many variables. But I do think we've got a better chance with this originalist court than any argument on these grounds would have had for the last 50 years.
Well said. John Eastman, we appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Artemis II is off, a 10-day tour around the moon. So why aren't we landing? Why is it so complex to do something we did so many times 50 years ago? Former NASA astronaut Captain Winston Scott back with us tonight. That's next.
You know Rob Finnerty. He's smart, bold, and stands strong for your values. Rob is fighting for you. Watch Finnerty weeknights only on Newsmax.
So, here is a before of my stomach before Sono Bello, and this is after.
This year, don't just lose weight, lose stubborn fat and sagging extra skin permanently at Sono Bello.
I had some loose, wiggly skin, and it is no longer there thanks to Sono Bello.
Our expert surgeons use micro laser technology to safely target and remove your diet-resistant fat and tighten loose skin permanently.
I wanted the results of the tummy tuck, but not the downtime. I had a 10 out of 10 experience.
We've helped over 300,000 people transform, and we're proud to be America's #1 cosmetic surgery specialist.
In just one visit, Sono Bello got rid of my love handles and my belly fat.
Do you want that flat stomach? You go get that flat stomach.
Call Sono Bello.
Get in there for your free consultation. Do this for you.
Schedule your free, no-obligation consultation. Our flexible payment options make it easy to get started today.
You're looking at Carvana's newest and proudest customer. So proud that we're teaming up to create Shackvana. Shackvana will be 100% online so customers can shop from anywhere.
That's so Shackvana.
Visit Shackvana or Carvana and buy your car today.
Mike Hammond here, founder of Signal Relief. Meet Dr. Beth Dupree, breast cancer surgeon for over 35 years.
In my surgical career, I have treated thousands of patients, and finding effective pain relief has always been a priority. Believe me, I was skeptical, but Signal Relief caught my attention because it actually works. Clinical trials show over 85% of participants felt relief within 72 hours, with nearly half noticing a significant difference in just 15 minutes. Just place it near or above wherever you have the pain, whether it's your back, your shoulder, your neck, or your knee. Signal Relief Patch brings proven relief. I recommend it to my patients, family, and friends, and I get to witness and experience their pain relief firsthand, and that brings a smile to my face.
Join the hundreds of thousands who have experienced relief with the Signal Relief Patch, and it comes with a money-back guarantee. Trust Dr. Dupree and me. The patch works.
So Dale, you really need to get that colon cancer screening.
Dad, it's been forever. I need to be in there. Wrap it up. Come on, Dad. It's taking forever.
How much longer?
It's been an hour. Are you done yet?
Dale, don't worry. We can do it with just a blood test. Shield.
Okay, let's do it.
Shield is for people 45 plus at average risk, not high risk for colon cancer. Ask your doctor about FDA-approved Shield from the company trusted in blood tests for cancer for over a decade.
The grind catches up with everyone, even me. That's why I trust Cunol Ultra High Absorption Turmeric to support my joint health. It's the #1 doctor-recommended form of turmeric that helps you keep doing the things you love at every age. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Forget the warm-up. DirecTV got hot. They're on fire with more MLB games than anyone.
Welcome to the big leagues, kid.
How old are you?
11.
All right, the president, about 90 minutes from now, addresses the nation on Iran. Our White House correspondent Mike Carter is at the White House with the latest on what we should expect to hear tonight. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Rob, good to be with you. Well, President Trump says we've already accomplished regime change in Iran, and the U.S. has already accomplished its main goal of making sure Iran never can have a nuclear weapon. And today, President Trump talking about a ceasefire agreement. The new president of Iran, the new regime president, President Trump says is far less radical and far more intelligent than past leaders. And the president says Iran wants a ceasefire in a war that the president expects to last another 2 to 3 weeks. What will the next 2 to 3 weeks look like? Well, we hope to learn a little bit more about that tonight. But hell hath no fury like a president's scorn. And President Trump, at least publicly, has been far more critical of NATO allies in recent days than he has even some of Iran's leadership. The president today at an Easter luncheon here at the White House talked about Operation Epic Fury for about the first 30 seconds, and then he went on for the next 3.5 minutes, really bashing NATO allies, in particular France and the UK, saying that NATO will be there for NATO, but NATO will not always be there for us. And of course, you think about the billions in dollars President Trump has sent to NATO in order for the war in Ukraine to finish up, forcing NATO allies in order to up their defense spending to 5%. This is clearly a relationship that is fractured, and President Trump will speak to this tonight. Late word tonight, Rob. We are expecting NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte here at the White House next week for a meeting with President Trump. Could be a new day when it comes to NATO in the U.S.
You're going to try and smooth things over. Rutte will try and smooth things over. Mike Carter from the White House, thanks so much.
You got it.
4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. And liftoff. The crew of Artemis II now.
Fun to see these, right? You usually see them from SpaceX. NASA is back. Artemis II's Orion spacecraft taking off just about an hour ago, maybe a little less. A 10-day mission around the moon. This time, Flight Artemis II will have 4 astronauts on board. They've done some of these unmanned in recent years. 3 Americans and a Canadian. You see them on the screen. The first crew to go to the moon since Apollo 17 in 1972, except this time they will not be landing there. The goal for this mission is to verify human capabilities in deep space and pave the way for long-term exploration and science on the lunar surface. The hope is for future crews to land on the moon as early as 2028, something the president, I'm sure, is going to want to see happen before he leaves office. Captain Winston Scott, former NASA astronaut, back with us tonight. And, sir, it's good to have you back on the show. I want to start here with you. We're going around the moon. Tell me why it's so hard to land on the moon.
Going around the moon and landing on the moon are 2 different phases of a more and more complex mission. First of all, we need to be sure that the rocket will get us to the moon and get us back safely. So this is the first flight with people on it. So we've tested the systems. Now we'll test the systems with the people. Now, the big kicker is that the part that gets us from orbit to the surface of the moon has not been fully developed yet. That's not ready yet. So it's one thing to go to the moon and go around it, but you need a lunar lander, so to speak. That part is not ready yet. So SpaceX is working on a version. Blue Origin is working on a version. Whoever finishes first will get the first checkout in Earth orbit next year. When that works fine, then the following year in 2028, we'll be able to have that module in orbit around the moon. We'll fly to it, dock with it, and then go to the surface up and down. So yeah, you got to have a way to get down and back.
Well, yeah, I know that's the hardest part, right? How cool is it for you to see NASA kind of making a comeback in this moment? Because a lot of that was siphoned off to SpaceX over the last few years.
Absolutely. I love it. And I actually love this partnership between NASA and the private commercial companies. I like what SpaceX is doing, what Blue Origin and some of the others are doing. But it's good to see NASA back in the business again. The space launch system, the rocket, we've had some problems with it over the last couple of years, but apparently they've got them all worked out. As you saw, it was a successful launch. The folks are in orbit now. They're getting settled in and they're going about their procedures. And I anticipate a really successful flight to and around the moon and back to Earth 10 days from now. This is very exciting, a very historic moment for us.
That is something cool. Got to ask you about the conspiracy theories. My team tells me we've landed 6 times on the moon. I didn't realize we had landed 6 times on the moon. That, to me, makes it hard to believe that there's a conspiracy there, right? Why would you fake something 6 different times? But my question to you is this. You've heard the theories out there. People say there's radiation belts that we can't survive, that this is all fake. What's your response to that claim, especially about the radiation?
No, it is absolutely not fake. They do bring up a good point, though. If we're going to travel long distances away from the Earth out into the solar system, we need to find ways to immune ourselves from the radiation. That is true. But going from here to the moon, we have done it. We will do it again in the future. The astronauts are shielded by the Earth's magnetic field when we're in close proximity. And then the ship itself provides radiation protection. Even the space suit on my space walk, my suit gave me a certain amount of protection from radiation. The radiation gets bad when you get out away from our close proximity to Earth. For example, going off to Mars. So that is going to be a big problem. That's true. But going to the moon is still right in our own backyard. We haven't been in a while, but well, Earth orbit is in our backyard. The moon maybe is down the block and back. So we're making progress.
Which is just so wild to think. It ain't that close. Captain Winston Scott, we appreciate you, sir. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
All right. As we hammer Iran, concerns about depleting our arsenal. Coming up, a next-generation company using a wild technology to rapidly rebuild our missiles. We've got the CEO with us next.
It's our America. We built it. Courage, freedom. Millions go to Newsmax when they need to know. Start today on the free Newsmax app. Newsmax is real news for real people.
Our family started Cane Brew with a dream and a lot of hard work. Now we're thriving, growing, and hiring. Artificial intelligence has made all the difference for our business. We're a case study for how AI is strengthening American manufacturing. Washington needs to help AI flourish. It's vital to our economic security. We cannot let China dominate these technologies. America must innovate and win. Let's protect our competitive edge.
Benjamin Franklin.
Reverend Whitfield?
A match made in heaven.
Or just a deal made in a print shop?
2 voices.
My friends, you want to be free.
1 idea.
The Constitution needs to speak to the heart of these people.
A new nation.
You are the lightning bolt, George. I am just the lightning rod. And who is the source, Ben?
A Great Awakening. Rated PG-13. In theaters Friday.
Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin, President and CEO of Swiss America. Do you know which investment has outperformed almost every other asset class since the beginning of last year? And that Goldman Sachs research is now forecasting to reach further heights. That's right, it's gold. Central banks around the world continue to buy gold at record levels due to economic turmoil, foreign conflicts, and a weakening U.S. economy plagued by debt. If you're concerned how to protect yourself as our financial system weakens, our team at Swiss America has a solution. For over 40 years, we've helped people just like you purchase precious metals for home delivery and for your IRAs. Don't miss out before this next big price jump. Call or text Swiss America at the number on your screen to receive your free portfolio review and a copy of The Timeless Truth About Gold and Silver. Let us show you how easy it is to safeguard your money. Call or text Swiss America today.
Doctors' Preferred Liver Defense is doctor-developed to support your natural detox function with clinically validated, triple-tested key ingredients to energize and renew your liver. Find Liver Defense in the supplement aisle at Walmart. Doctors Preferred. Better science, better results.
Some wireless companies say that they stand for something. What exactly do they stand for, and why won't they say it out loud? Let me tell you what Patriot Mobile stands for. They stand for the lives of the unborn. They stand for the Second Amendment and the right to protect yourself and your family. They stand for our veterans and first responders who sacrifice so much for our freedom. Make the switch to Patriot Mobile today and support a company that doesn't just say they stand for something, but one that stands for the things that matter the most.
I am a Gold Star spouse to CIA officer Casey Clark. And he came home. By Monday, he had struck a very high fever. They put him on a ventilator. Definitely the hardest moment to have to tell a child that their father is passing away. Tunnel to Towers coming into our lives has transformed us. To have your home paid for, I really am so grateful to Tunnel to Towers.
All right, so the depletion of our missile and weapons systems is one of the major concerns as we continue to pummel Iran. Allegations the U.S. is burning through its weapons stockpile, some alleging the continuation of this fight for several more weeks could leave us vulnerable. Divergent Technologies is a company that has an answer for that, an AI-driven 3D manufacturing company. It is based in California. The company works in aerospace, defense, and also automotive production using a software-designed manufacturing program using its Divergent Adaptive Production System of AI-driven design, industrial 3D printing, robotic assembly to help produce and replenish missiles, drones, and other munitions at much lower cost and faster speed than we have ever seen. It's really interesting stuff. And Lukas Czinger is the CEO of Divergent, and he joins us now. Lukas, good to have you here. I'm trying to understand kind of how you guys do this, because I know, when Raytheon makes a missile, how complicated it is, how expensive it is. Tell us how you do it better and cheaper.
Absolutely. At Divergent, we are building a next generation production system, both the way we engineer and the way we manufacture. And we're scaling that system into a factory network, which really rebuilds and does so in a next generation way, our industrial base in the US. You can think of us as a next generation infrastructure company, a platform business. And what we've done is combined digitally driven engineering using AI. So design tools where we can take requirements for a missile system. What size is it going to be? What payload is it going to carry? What is the CFD requirements? What load cases will it see? Structure that in an input file, upload that into a piece of design software that is a US design software we've written the source code for, is steered by AI, and allows us to reach a performant design in a very short period of time. So something that may have taken 2 years to design in the past, we can now design in 2 to 3 weeks. Once we have that design, the heart of the company is the manufacturing process. We take that design and we actually 3D print out of aluminum alloys, out of Inconels, out of titaniums, these airframes for these missile platforms, interceptors, tubes, and sustainment parts. So you're able to take that digital design, transfer it to your 3D printer, 3D print any number of these products, and then assemble them with full automation with a robotic assembly system. It took us 10 years to develop this process. So over 600 patents on the business. As you said earlier, we call it the Divergent Adaptive Production System, DAPS. And what does it do for the primes? What does it do for the warfighter? It delivers product far faster, and it scales the manufacturing of that product. So we sit as a service business to the primes, support all of the large primes and neo primes in the US, and manufacture their airframes and their critical hardware.
Give me an example of, let's say there's a missile. Can you give me an example of a missile that has been produced for a while, how long it took, how much it cost versus how well you guys can do something comparable to that? Can you give us a specific?
When we look at the traditional design process and manufacturing process for, let's use an example of a medium range missile system, can go a few hundred miles, carries 100 pounds plus of payload. So a very serious piece of hardware, something similar to what we're seeing in the Rackham system today. By example, you would be going from 200 plus parts down to under 10 parts using our system. You'll be going from a performance benchmark where we are saving a significant amount of mass, call it 30% of mass versus baseline, and we're also increasing fuel volume by close to 30%. So you're talking about the performance of a missile system, 30% more fuel means you can go 30% further. It's an extension of your range. You're then able to scale the manufacturing. What may have taken 20 days of manual layup if you're doing a composite process, or multiple different cast parts across different vendors, all consolidated into a cycle time, which for us is typically under 24 hours per missile, per printer. So to expand that point, when we're talking about scale, one of our 3D printers can typically do 225 of your average munition per year. So if you have 100 printers, a factory could do 25,000 close to airframes per annum out of a single factory.
That is just wild. That is so cool. And I know you had the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth touring your facility not too long ago. This is the future of weapons manufacturing right here. Lukas Czinger from Divergent. Thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Great talking with you.
All right, Don Lemon's ego has sent him into a delusional state. That is next in News from the Left.
The gravity of the message of Earth Day still came through. Act or die.
Rather than forecasts of planetary doom, how about the facts? Carbon dioxide is necessary for photosynthesis. Plants harness sunlight, water, and CO2 in photosynthesis to create food and oxygen. This makes life possible. Plants need at least 150 parts per million of CO2 to survive. And when CO2 levels are higher, vegetation thrives. The science is clear. Increasing CO2 is greening our planet. Forests and grasslands are expanding. Deserts are shrinking. Crop harvests are increasing. Satellites show vegetation has been increasing globally. Without CO2, there would be famine. No crops, no food, no life. There's more to know about CO2, the miracle molecule. Learn how CO2 helps the Earth prosper at CO2coalition.org.
Protect your family. Buy LifeVac now.
Thank you, Daddy. That was us over 10 years ago filming LifeVac's first commercial in our living room.
Now LifeVac has saved 5,000 lives all over the world. All these people were saved by LifeVac.
Thousands of people choke to death every year, one child every 5 days.
These tragedies don't have to happen. LifeVac is the only FDA-authorized anti-choking device. Please consider protecting yourself, your family, your community. Go to lifevac.com today.
Thanks, Dad.
Need blood pressure support? Total Beets contain a patented key ingredient clinically shown to deliver 2 times better blood pressure support. That's why Total Beets is the #1 best-selling beets brand in America. Take control of your health with Total Beets. Search Amazon now for Total Beets.
This is Fubo. It's your way to watch ESPN and other top sports networks. Plus, get coverage of your local teams all year long. Start watching at FuboTV.com.
Kevin Sorbo here, and I have an important message to share. The government needs more money, your money. If you owe the IRS back taxes, they can garnish your wages and levy your bank accounts. They can even seize your retirement or take your home. Don't let the IRS target you. Call the professionals at Tax Network USA. Their tax lawyers and enrolled agents are experts in powerful programs that may even help you eliminate your tax debt.
Call for a free consultation or visit tnusa.com.
A heart attack? Do they have life insurance?
No.
But we have life insurance. John.
I'm trying to find something we can afford.
Fortunately, in only a few minutes, SelectQuote found John a $500,000 policy for only $29 a month. And his wife Anne a $500,000 policy for only $21 a month. Go to SelectQuote.com now and get the insurance your family needs
at a price you can afford. SelectQuote. We shop, you save.
Welcome back. Time now for News from the Left. At the intersection of overinflated ego and pure delusion, we find our good friend Don Lemon, who has big plans for the future, maybe.
I think I could be president of the United States. I could definitely run this country better than Donald Trump. Why can't I think about being president of the United States when, look at what we have. Did anybody think Barack Obama, as he says, this guy with a funny name that's from a mixed background, did anybody ever think that he would become president? I don't have an aspiration to become president, but I do think that I could run this country a lot better than Donald Trump.
Imagine Don Lemon running the United States. Immediately satisfying every radical far-left lobbying group in Washington. Can you fathom the kinds of executive orders we would see? There'd be a rainbow flag flying at the White House. Modern monetary theory would have us just printing trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. He'd be convinced that there's No problem with that. Inflation doesn't really exist. You can print as much as you want because we have our own currency. That's what these people like AOC believe, Bernie Sanders, etc. Defund the hell out of policing, of course. It would be the left-wing open border utopia we've always dreamed of, the Don Lemon presidency. And of course, Democrats in Washington wouldn't be able to say anything because how are you going to stand up to a gay black man if you are in the Democrat Party? You're not allowed to do that. Next up, communist podcaster Hassan Piker getting his first actual taste of communism. He's a multi-millionaire here in the United States, and he's an avowed communist. Well, he finally got to go see how it operates and how sweet it is to see.
I couldn't believe the sights that I was seeing. It was very sad. You had homes that looked like they were bombed out, and it was definitely unlike anything I've ever experienced before. Everything's pitch black. There aren't any traffic lights on. Like, it's crazy. I was very sad by all the poverty that I saw, but then it was very angering. It was very anger-inducing because I felt like, there was a lot of potential on this island that we were just robbing the people of.
And that's the key at the end there. So what these people do is, the United States has had embargoes against nations like Cuba. This is what we do as a final step of trying to get these regimes out of power after they have decimated their economies with communism. You know what happens when you try collectivism at that level. It fails every time. Everybody stops working. Everybody just starts taking from the dole. Because why the hell are you going to work and give 80-90% of your money to the state and just get your little return back? Of course you're going to stop working. You're just going to say, just give me my free thing. I'm not going to go to work and give it all to the government. Why would I do that if we all get the same? It fails every time. What they try to do is what he's doing. They say, okay, the reason that it's bad, it would be the utopia. It'd be the communist utopia if only the United States wouldn't embargo the country. No, it failed long before that. Cuba does look like it's been bombed out. You should see the level of poverty. It is fascinating to see. If you ever get to go to Havana, I actually suggest that you do. But the idea that they're trying to push, which is that the reason that it's bad is because of the American embargoes and Western embargoes against the government of the country, is just so ridiculous. And it's something only that a streamer in the United States who's never learned a damn thing about the real world would be able to say with a straight face. Something else. Next up, the joys of open borders after nearly 2 decades of decline. HIV and AIDS infections in Chicago are rising, mostly with the Latino population, growing 29% between 2022 and 2024. 818 new cases, nearly half of them among Latinos. Chicago health officials had to be careful with how they said this, but saying early clues behind the increase among Latinos include a change in migration patterns. What a euphemism. What a euphemism for 4 years of open borders, which possibly included people who hadn't been tested or maintained their care. Yeah, a change in migration patterns. Does that mean bringing in 20 million third world people into the country? Because I think that's exactly what it means. And by the way, the left's also been blaming measles spikes on RFK Jr. No, it's because you brought 20 million third world immigrants into our country. And finally, tonight, Stephen A. Smith on with Sage Steele, admitting that he voted Kamala Harris and admitting that he regrets it.
And you said that you voted for Kamala Harris.
Yes.
And that you regretted it.
Yeah. Trump, you bring up the indictments, you bring up his behavior, you bring up all of these different things. And America still said he's more normal than y'all. And you still don't get it. And I thought you'd get it, but you didn't get it. So I lost all faith.
That's a good summation of it. I can't believe that he actually admitted that he voted for Kamala Harris. But exactly, as much as you throw at Trump, you look at the other side, and it's terrifying. It's terrifying what these people believe. All right, up next, Swalwell is freaking out over the Fang release.
You know Rob Finnerty. He's smart, bold, and stands strong for your values. Rob is fighting for you. Watch Finnerty weeknights only on Newsmax.
Don't kibble your dog.
Oh, hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
But what's wrong with this? It's premium stuff.
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means it's ultra-processed at extremely high temperatures that destroy the nutrients in the food. But at Dr. Marty, we gently freeze-dried premium meats, fruit, and vegetables, locking in their nutrients.
Never kibbled.
You got it, kid, and they're gonna love it.
AI company Palantir makes critical decisions for governments around the world.
In 2019, Palantir bought $50 million in gold in case of black swan events. Not surprising what followed. In 2020, a pandemic shut down the global economy. And in 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. In 2023, we had a regional banking collapse. And in 2026, could a 1929-style market crash be the final straw? Give Patriot Gold Group a call at 888-528-4290 before it's too late. Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold and silver dealer 9 years in a row. Home of the no-fee-for-life IRA. Patriot Gold Group is patriots protecting patriots. Call now, 888-528-4290.
That first half was embarrassing, just like my ED used to be. But let me tell you something, boys. Rougiette has custom compound ED meds designed to work on your body and your mind. I'm talking brain and body. Let's go!
1 second, Grandma. This guy's gonna buy my car. Okay.
You need Carvana. Entering plate number. No accidents, right?
No.
Generating offer. Carvana can pick it up tomorrow.
That's an amazing offer.
Sell your car the easy way with Carvana.
When my mother heard about Pure Talk's latest offer, she said, Michael, that's a third of what I'm paying my current provider. How's that even possible? I said, Ma, your current provider spent $12 billion last year on advertising and promotion. Pure Talk hired me to make a few commercials on my iPhone. That's why you can get unlimited talk and text with plenty of data on a crazy fast 5G network for just $25 a month. You're welcome. Pure Talk. Everything you need. Nothing you don't.
I lost 110 pounds. You couldn't tell at all because of my excess skin. Sono Bello changed that in one visit.
Introducing the new Lift EX, the just one visit, total body transformation everyone is talking about.
I am super happy with my results.
I decided to give Sono Bello a try. Look at me, I have a silhouette. You can see my waist.
Lift EX is Sono Bello's breakthrough 360-degree body lift alternative. Our body contouring experts sculpt, tighten, and lift your stomach, waist, thighs, and backside, all in just one visit with less downtime.
Sono Bello targeted the areas diet and exercise could not do. I found me again.
Sono Bello has over 50,000 five-star reviews, and Lift EX is exclusively available at Sono Bello, America's #1 cosmetic surgery specialist. Book your free, personalized consultation today. Easy monthly plans make your best body more affordable than ever.
This year is my year thanks to Sono Bello.
Call Sono Bello for your free consultation today.
And finally tonight, Eric Swalwell wants to run the state of California. Our DOJ could ensure that the pervert never actually gets there. Swalwell terrified as Cash Patel says he's releasing the Fang files, the Chinese spy he had the relationship with, all of those documents. This is a guy that's been calling for the release of everything on Epstein, right? He wants full transparency with the government. He wants it as long as it's not an investigation into himself. He's calling this a tremendous abuse of power, the threat of releasing all of these files. Take a look.
To try and smear a political opponent, I mean, it's just absurd. It's absolutely absurd. One of our lawyers told me today, and this really kind of stops you right in your tracks. He said if they do this, it'll be the greatest abuse of power by an FBI director since J. Edgar Hoover. And so those are the stakes, that we would allow the FBI to just go after the president's political enemies.
Rob Finnerty,
Yes.
if we release these documents to the American public, it'll be the greatest abuse of power since J. Edgar Hoover.
Since Merrick Garland, and before him they say James Comey, and we don't want to be in that territory, do we, Rob?
It's so fun watching him sweat. There may be nobody worse in Washington than Eric Swalwell.
By the way, not just like dated, like full-on relationship on a track toward marriage with Fang.
Yeah, wonder what the wife thinks of that.
Yes, Rob, good to see you. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you. Finnerty starts now.